There is a moment in every life when something shatters. It can come as loss, betrayal, illness, failure, or sometimes nothing more than the quiet sense that you have been living someone else's story. The fracture begins small, almost invisible, like a hairline crack running through glass. But once it appears, nothing will ever be the same. We are taught to fear these breaks, to see them as proof that something inside us has gone wrong. But in Jungian psychology, the wound is not the end of the path, it is the beginning. Jung called it the summons of the self, the call to descend into the unknown. The wound is sacred because it is the one place the ego cannot control. It breaks open the illusion that we are whole without depth, that we can live untouched by what lies beneath. The crack in the surface is the first invitation to the soul. At first, we resist. We patch it, hide it, paint over it with smiles and affirmations. We tell ourselves that if we can just stay strong, the pain will pass. But the psyche does not want us to return to who we were. It wants us to remember what we are. Pain is the language of the unconscious. It speaks in sensations, in dreams, in the ache that has no words. Each time we avoid it, we exile a part of ourselves deeper into the shadow. But the soul is patient. It will call again and again, until we turn toward the very thing we fear. The wound is not random. It carries the pattern of your becoming. Every scar, every fracture, every disappointment is a symbol written in the hidden script of your life. The people who hurt you, the failures that broke you, the moments that stripped you bare, they were not detours, they were initiation. In the mythic language Jung loved, the wound is the place where the hero falls before rising. It is the moment the sword breaks, the temple burns, the guiding star disappears. Only then can the deeper journey begin. For years, we live in the illusion of control. We build lives made of plans, expectations, identities. But one day, something cuts through the pattern, and suddenly the life we built no longer fits. This is not punishment. It is the psyche demanding truth. When the old form breaks, what lies beneath begins to breathe. The mask slips, and what was hidden beneath, the grief, the longing, the buried wisdom, comes flooding back. You begin to feel everything you once silenced. And though it hurts, it is the first honest feeling you've had in years. Carl Jung wrote that we do not heal by denial, but by contact. The wound, when touched with awareness, becomes a doorway. It opens not outward, but inward, into the vast interior where meaning sleeps. Imagine a vase broken in the dark. For a long time you sweep the pieces aside, afraid to see the damage. But one day, light enters the room. You kneel and start to gather the fragments. As you touch them, you realize they are not dead shards. They are mirrors. Each one reflects a part of you had forgotten. The act of seeing your wound without shame is the beginning of alchemy. The crack becomes the channel through which light enters the vessel. You begin to understand that beauty was never perfection. It was transparency. There is a reason ancient myths link the wound to wisdom. In every sacred story, the hero is marked by injury, the limp of Oedipus, the wound of the fisher king, the stigmata of the mystic. The wound makes them human. But more than that, it opens the gate to the divine. You cannot feel compassion without first feeling pain. You cannot see wholeness without first losing it. The brokenness humbles you, strips you, and in doing so reveals what endures when everything else falls away. In the beginning, this process feels like destruction. You lose friends who cannot understand the silence you now carry. You feel disconnected from the world that once defined you. But underneath the grief is a strange intelligence at work, an inner architect rearranging the ruins into something truer. The wound teaches surrender. It teaches trust in forces unseen. It shows you that control was never safety, only illusion. And when you finally stop fighting the pain, you realize it has been guiding you home all along. There is beauty in the broken, because the fracture lets life in. A heart that has never broken cannot feel the world. A soul that has never fallen cannot understand grace. Your wound does not make you less. It makes you vast. It connects you to every other being who has ever suffered and survived. It softens the edges of judgment. It deepens your seeing. It gives you empathy that no textbook can teach. In Jung's words, the wound is the place where consciousness is born. To face it is to begin the sacred dialogue between the ego and the soul, the dialogue that makes you real. And so you stop asking, "When will this end?" and begin to ask, "What is this trying to show me?" You stop running from the pain and start walking with it. You carry it gently, like a fragile light through a long night, because somewhere within that pain is the seed of something eternal, a truth so luminous that it needed to hide inside your suffering to be found. The wound does not close when you forget it. It closes when you remember what it opened. And when that remembering comes, not as relief, but as revelation, you will understand why Jung called it sacred. It is not the pain that sanctifies it, but what it awakens. A deeper life, a truer love, a self that finally feels whole. Every wound has a voice. It does not scream. It does not speak in language. It hums in your bones, whispers through your dreams, and waits in the quiet moments when there is no one left to distract you. That voice is what Jung called the shadow, the hidden twin of the self, the forgotten child of your own soul. The shadow is not evil. It is everything you could not bear to see. It is your anger that you called unspiritual, your desire that you labeled wrong, your jealousy, your fear, your pride, your need, all the parts of you that were sent away because they did not fit the story of who you thought you should be. When you exile something from your consciousness, it does not disappear. It waits. It hides in the cracks of your psyche, gathering power, speaking through your habits and projections, drawing you again and again toward the very people and situations that mirror what you refuse to face. And when the wound opens, the shadow begins to cry. Its cry is not meant to punish you. It is meant to summon you. It is the soul's way of saying, "Come home." Jung wrote that we do not become whole by chasing perfection, but by making the darkness conscious. This is the work of the empath who has begun to awaken, to realize that compassion without boundaries is self-erasure, and that forgiveness without truth is denial. At first, the shadow appears as others. You see it in the people who irritate you, in the lovers who betray you, in the voices that reject you. You think it is them, but it is you, the part of you that wants to be seen but cannot speak. The people who trigger you are your teachers in disguise. They are the mirrors through which your unconscious tries to introduce itself. To meet your shadow is to feel, not to analyze or suppress, but to feel, fully, without judgment. The sadness you push away, the rage you hide, the jealousy you pretend not to feel, they are not flaws. They are signals. Each emotion carries a fragment of the self trying to return. Pain, when witnessed, transforms. The shadow, when met with light, begins to soften. It does not vanish. It integrates. The purpose of this meeting is not to destroy the darkness, but to give it form, to bring it into the circle of your awareness. This is the true meaning of compassion, not sweetness, but inclusion. To hold within you both the broken and the divine, and to say to them, "You both belong here." When you begin this work, you may feel as though you are unraveling. You will see the masks you wear, the stories you tell, the ways you shapeshift to be loved. You will see the resentment you carry beneath your kindness, the exhaustion hidden beneath your empathy. It is uncomfortable, but it is real. The shadow will test you through relationships. You will meet people who treat you the way you treat yourself in secret. You will attract those who embody your unspoken beliefs about love and worth. And when you try to fix them, you will realize that you are really trying to fix the part of you they represent. This realization can break your heart, but it will also open it. Because when you finally see that your pain has always been your own reflection, you stop running. You stop blaming. You start listening. The cry of the shadow is not chaos. It is longing. It wants to belong to you again. It wants to be forgiven for being human. There is a sacred moment in this process, a point of stillness where you look into the mirror and no longer flinch. You see your darkness and recognize its innocence. The anger was only the cry for boundary. The envy was the yearning for forgotten potential. The sadness was the memory of love unreceived. Each emotion that once terrified you becomes a teacher. Anger becomes clarity. Fear becomes awareness. Shame becomes humility. Grief becomes compassion. This is the art of shadow integration. To take back what you gave away. To reclaim what you rejected. To see beauty in what you were taught to despise. In the myth of Inanna, the goddess of light descends into the underworld, stripped of her jewels and power until she stands naked before her dark twin, Ereshkigal. It is only by embracing her twin that she is reborn. Jung saw this as a map of the soul. The descent into the shadow as the precondition for wholeness. You too must descend. Not to fight, but to witness. The shadow does not need to be conquered. It needs to be held. When you hold your own darkness with love, it no longer controls you. You become the container, vast, luminous, unbreakable. This is how consciousness expands, by inclusion, not exclusion. The more darkness you can hold without fear, the more light you can carry without pride. You begin to notice subtle changes. The world feels less threatening. People's judgments sting less. The chaos that once consumed you now passes through you like wind through open doors. You are no longer reactive, because you no longer deny what they touch. You start to understand that everything you rejected about yourself was never meant to be erased. It was meant to be transformed. Gold is hidden in the places we least want to look. This is why Jung said, "The shadow, when recognized, is the seat of creativity." It is the place from which art, compassion, and authenticity are born. When you bring light into darkness, the two do not fight, they merge. And from that merging, a deeper truth emerges, that you were never two, you were always one. The shadow stops crying when you finally turn toward it. It stops haunting you when you begin to listen. It stops hurting you when you embrace it as yourself. And in that embrace, you begin to see the paradox that underlies all healing. The darkness was never against you. It was always for you. It broke you open so you could finally feel. It made you suffer so you could finally see. This is not the end of pain. It is the beginning of meaning. For when you learn to sit with your shadow, to listen to its trembling voice without judgment or fear, you realize that what cries within you is not your enemy. It is your most honest self, asking softly to come home. There comes a time in every transformation when the light fades and silence becomes unbearable. You can no longer pretend. The world that once held you together begins to crumble, and you find yourself standing in the ruins of what used to be your life. This is the descent. Jung called it the night sea journey, the plunge into the dark waters of the unconscious, where all forms dissolve and nothing familiar remains. It begins quietly. You wake one morning and the things that once gave you joy feel hollow. The ambitions, the identities, the stories that once sustained you lose their meaning. You look in the mirror and barely recognize the face staring back. It's not depression, it's disintegration. The ego is being stripped down, purified, reformed. The descent is not a mistake. It is the psyche's way of making room for truth. The life you thought you wanted begins to collapse because a deeper life is trying to emerge. In mythology, every hero must descend. Orpheus into the underworld, Inanna into the depths, Christ into the tomb. Each must face the dissolution that precedes resurrection. Jung saw this as a law of the soul, that consciousness grows only through the death of its old forms. But no one tells you how it feels. It feels like falling. It feels like losing your mind. It feels like everything you loved turning to dust while you stand there, helpless, trying to hold on to a world that no longer wants you. You begin to question everything. Who am I without the roles I played? What remains when the masks are gone? Why does everything I touch seem to crumble? The descent strips you bare. It takes away your false strength, your self-image, your illusions of control. It leaves you raw, exposed, empty. And in that emptiness, the real work begins. Falling apart is not failure. It is initiation. The ego calls it destruction. The soul calls it purification. You are being emptied of everything that was never truly yours. The descent is the nigredo, the black stage of alchemy, the phase of putrefaction where the old substance rots so the new can be born. It is death without dying, the sacred unraveling that precedes transformation. At first you resist. You try to climb back up, to rebuild what is gone. But the more you cling, the deeper you sink. It is only when you stop fighting, when you surrender to the fall, that something extraordinary happens. The darkness becomes soft. The silence begins to breathe. You start to feel a presence, not outside you, but within. It is the self, the eternal center of the psyche, watching you from the depths. You begin to understand you are not falling into chaos. You are falling into yourself. This realization changes everything. You stop asking, "How do I escape this?" and begin to ask, "What is this trying to teach me?" In that moment, the descent becomes art. Every tear becomes a brushstroke. Every loss becomes a line of poetry. Every silence becomes a canvas upon which the soul paints its secret meaning. The art of falling apart is not about learning to endure pain. It is about learning to see through it. You begin to realize that the pain is not an obstacle, but a doorway. That the fragments of your life are not mistakes, but symbols. Each broken piece holds an image of the whole. Each loss hides a gift waiting to be recognized. Jung said, "The soul would have no rainbow if the eyes had no tears." When everything falls apart, it is the soul's way of preparing you for a new kind of seeing. One that does not divide the world into light and dark, good and bad, success and failure, but sees everything as part of a single unfolding pattern. At this stage, you may feel abandoned by life. Friends drift away. Certainties dissolve. Even God seems silent. But that silence is not absence. It is gestation. What is being born cannot yet speak. The descent teaches patience, the art of waiting without knowing. Again in the darkness, the ego dies by inches, and something older, wiser, more mysterious begins to breathe through you. This is the point where many turn away. They try to escape back into the noise, the busyness, the distractions of the world. But if you can stay, if you can endure the not knowing, you will discover the stillness that lies beneath all endings. There is beauty in this fall, not the beauty of perfection, but of authenticity, the raw, unfiltered beauty of being broken open. You begin to see that every fracture lets the soul shine through. It is in this place that humility is born, the humility that no longer seeks to control, but to listen. You start to hear the whisper of the unconscious, faint but clear. Trust the dark. This is the paradox of descent. The deeper you fall, the closer you come to the center. The night becomes the cradle of rebirth. The ashes become the seedbed of light. When you stop fearing the fall, you begin to fly differently, not upward, but inward. You realize that the ground you feared was not death, but depth. And one day, after what feels like forever, the darkness begins to lighten. Not with blinding brightness, but with a soft golden shimmer at the edges. The silence starts to sing. You realize that nothing was lost, only transformed. The art of falling apart is the art of remembering that you were never meant to stay intact. Wholeness is not the absence of cracks. It is the light that seeps through them. You are not the person you were. You are not yet the person you will become. You are the space in between, the chrysalis dissolving, the soil breaking open, the silence before the dawn. And in that sacred in-between, if you listen closely, you can hear the quiet voice of the soul whispering, not of endings but of beginnings. Fall deeper. Trust the unraveling. This is how the light finds you. After the darkness there comes a light so gentle that at first you do not notice it. It does not blaze or blind. It hums softly beneath your skin, like warmth returning to a frozen body. It is the light that has been hidden inside your pain all along, waiting for you to see it not as punishment, but as passage. You have descended into yourself. You have broken apart. You have faced what you feared most. And in doing so, something miraculous begins to happen. The wound starts to glow. This is the stage Jung called albedo, the whitening, the cleansing, the quiet radiance that follows the night of disintegration. It is not joy as you once knew it. It is stillness, a peace that does not depend on circumstances, a calm that arises from having survived your own depths. You realize now that nothing was wasted. Every heartbreak was a teacher. Every failure was an initiation. Every scar a script written in the secret language of your becoming. The scar is golden because it tells a truth that cannot be erased. You have been broken, and you have healed, but differently than before. The wound did not disappear. It became luminous. In the Japanese art of kintsugi, broken pottery is mended with veins of gold. The cracks are not hidden. They are illuminated. The vessel becomes more valuable precisely because it has been broken. This is what the psyche does when we stop running from our pain. It fills the fractures with light, turning our weakness into wisdom, our sorrow into understanding, our wounds into art. At first, this light feels fragile. You are cautious with it, as if it might leave. But then you notice something strange. The light is not above you, not outside you. It is you. The gold was always in the clay. The pain was only the fire that revealed it. You begin to speak differently, to listen differently, to see differently. You are no longer searching for healing. You are living it. You no longer need to prove your worth because you have seen it reflected in your own brokenness. What once felt like loss now feels like liberation. The relationships that ended, the dreams that died, they were not mistakes. They were clearings, spaces made sacred for something truer to grow. You understand now that wisdom is not knowledge gathered from books or teachers. Wisdom is the light that seeps from the cracks of a heart that has dared to stay open. This is why the ancients said the wounded healer is the most powerful of all. Because the one who has faced their pain can hold the pain of others without drowning. The one who has descended into shadow carries a lantern for those still afraid of the dark. The alchemy of suffering is not about escaping it. It is about transforming it into compassion. You begin to see your life as a great pattern of unfoldings, where even the most unbearable moments were secretly aligned with your becoming. And so gratitude begins to rise. Not the shallow gratitude of denial, but the deep gratitude that recognizes the intelligence within everything that has happened. The scar on your soul becomes your signature, a golden thread woven through the fabric of your story. It no longer represents pain, it represents power. You carry your wound not as shame, but as wisdom. You start to see others differently too. You recognize the pain behind their anger, the fear behind their cruelty, the longing behind their silence. Because you have met those places within yourself, you can hold their darkness without losing your light. This is the gift of the golden scar, empathy born from experience. It is the ability to see the divine in what appears broken, to sense the light trying to rise even in the heart of despair. Jung once wrote, "The gold is in the dark." You understand now that this was not metaphor. It was revelation. The gold is not something added later. It is what was hidden in the blackness all along. As you move through the world, you begin to leave traces of this gold wherever you go. A word of kindness here, a silence that allows another to breathe, a gaze that says, "I see you, you are safe." These are not small gestures. They are sacred acts. They are the living proof that your wound has become your wisdom. Sometimes the world will still hurt you. People will still misunderstand. Old fears may whisper again, but now you do not fight them. You listen. You let them pass through you like wind through an open field. Because you know they are not enemies. They are reminders, echoes of the door you already walked through. You begin to live without armor, not because you are fearless, but because you are faithful. You trust the process of life, even when it unravels. You trust the descent, because you have seen what rises from it. You trust the wound, because you know what it carries. The golden scar does not close. It glows. It becomes a living bridge between who you were and who you are becoming. A reminder that beauty was never about perfection. It was about presence. Your life becomes a quiet testament that the soul can be broken and still sing, that the heart can be scarred and still open, that light can emerge not in spite of pain, but because of it. This is the hidden meaning of healing, not erasing the story, but learning to tell it differently, not forgetting what broke you, but finding the melody inside the fracture. And one day, you will look back and realize, the moments you thought were endings were beginnings in disguise. The times you cursed your pain were the times your soul was crafting gold. You are the vessel and the light that fills it. You are the broken bowl and the golden seam. You are the art of your own restoration. And from now on, whenever you touch your scars, may you remember, they are not where you were wounded. They are where you began to shine. When everything has been burned away, the stories, the identities, the masks, what remains is silence. But it is not the silence of absence. It is the silence of completion. The silence after a storm when the air is clear and the world feels newly born. This is the light that remains, the quiet gold that no longer flickers or fades, the radiance that does not shout but hums softly in every breath, in every heartbeat. After all the descent, after the breaking and the healing, you realize something extraordinary. You were never searching for perfection. You were searching for wholeness. Perfection divides. Wholeness unites. Perfection demands that nothing be missing. Wholeness says, everything belongs. You look back now at your journey, the falls, the fractures, the nights of despair, and you no longer wish they hadn't happened, because without them you would still be asleep. The pain did not destroy you, it revealed you. The breaking did not end you, it refined you. And now in this stillness, you can finally see what the soul has been trying to show you all along. You are not the wounded one. You are the light that has been shining through the wound. In Jung's language, this is individuation, the union of the opposites, the birth of the self. It is not becoming something new. It is remembering what you have always been. When the shadow was integrated, you found depth. When the pain was embraced, you found meaning. And when the pieces were gathered, you found that they had always formed a circle, the mandala of your being. The mandala, the eternal symbol of wholeness, appears not as something you draw, but as something that draws you. It forms in your life, in your choices, in the way you hold both joy and sorrow in the same gentle breath. You no longer reject what hurts. You listen to it. You no longer chase what glitters. You rest in what glows. This is what it means to become whole, to live as the meeting point of all your contradictions, to be both shadow and light, both broken and healed, both human and divine. The world does not change when you reach this place. Your seeing does. You begin to notice the same light in others, in their pain, in their confusion, in their endless search for meaning. And instead of trying to fix them, you begin to love them, not as ideals, but as mirrors. Wholeness is not isolation, it is connection. It is the recognition that your healing is inseparable from the healing of the world, that every act of awareness ripples outward, every small kindness shifts the web of life. When you stop resisting what is, you begin to move with it. The river no longer frightens you because you know you are not separate from its current. The waves no longer threaten you because you have learned how to breathe underwater. This is the true gold of the alchemist, not metal, but meaning. Not the transmutation of matter, but the transmutation of perception. The ability to look at darkness and say, "This too is sacred." You walk through the same world as before, but you see it differently now. The cracks in the walls catch the sunlight. The faces of strangers glow with quiet dignity. The smallest things, a breeze, a shadow, a whisper, feel alive, as if the universe is breathing with you. This is not enlightenment as escape. It is illumination as embodiment. You carry the light, not to rise above the world, but to live more deeply within it. And as you walk, you leave behind golden traces, not of triumph, but of tenderness. Your words soften, your presence heals. You begin to radiate the kind of peace that asks for nothing, because it has already found everything. You start to understand why every sacred text speaks of return, not to heaven, but to the heart. Because the journey was never about becoming divine, it was about remembering that you already were. And this is why the mystics smile through their tears, why the alchemists laugh at the end of their work. They realize that the light they were seeking was the light doing the seeking. The circle closes, and yet it feels infinite. You are not finished, you are whole. And that wholeness is not a static state, but a living rhythm, a balance that dances between shadow and flame. Now, when life breaks again, and it will, you will not despair. You will remember that breaking is part of breathing, that loss is part of love, that endings are just beginnings folded inward. You will look at your scars, and instead of asking, "Why me?" you will whisper, "Thank you," because you have seen the secret. The light never leaves. It only hides, waiting for your eyes to adjust. And so you live now, not as a seeker, but as a mirror, not chasing the sun, but reflecting it, not fearing the dark, because you have seen that darkness is not the absence of light, but its womb. This is the wholeness that remains, the steady flame that burns quietly within the soul long after the fire has passed. It is not loud, not dramatic, but it endures. It is the light that listens, the love that does not demand, the peace that does not end. And when you meet others on their way down into their own depths, you will not rush to pull them up. You will simply sit beside them and say, "I know this place." You are not lost. You are becoming. That is how the world heals, not through fixing, but through remembering. Not through noise, but through presence. The light that remains within you is not yours alone. It belongs to the great rhythm of creation. To be whole is to become transparent to that rhythm, to let it move through you like breath through wind. And as the final golden light fades, the voice of the soul speaks softly, almost like a prayer. You are not the wound. You are what shines through it. You are not the seeker. You are what is found. You are not the broken one. You are the wholeness that endures. And now, if this journey spoke to something within you, if you felt a quiet recognition in the silence between the words, subscribe to Mind Alchemy, where we continue to explore the union of light and shadow, the mysteries of Jungian psychology, and the timeless art of becoming whole.